Appreciate it.
Yep. I think it's recording.
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to our June ECO meeting. We have quite an agenda, so we'll just jump right in. Before we get into any technical topics, I'd like to welcome our new pending member, Melissa Stoker from the Department of Health, and ask her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Like she said, my name is Melissa Stoker. I'm the digital media manager at MDH. So I oversee our main social media accounts and also we have about 40 that are associated with the department that I am responsible for reviewing too. And then I also do the digital aspects of all of our paid and organic campaigns. So that's in creating the content and also doing the placement, targeting, reporting, all of those things as well. And then, of course, making updates to the social media policy, which is constantly changing and following everything that's happening with legislators. So I'm excited to be here.
Excited
Thanks
to
for
have you
having
too.
me.
All right. Well, maybe if we have time later, we'll kind of do a round robin and have everybody introduce themselves. But we have a couple of guest speakers, and especially Dr. Dennison, who is calling in from across the pond to talk with us this afternoon. So let me introduce him. Dr. Bill Dennison is a professor of marine science and interim president of the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. Since 2003, he served as the vice president for science application and led the integration and application network charged to inspire, manage, and produce timely syntheses and assessments on key environmental issues, with a special focus on the Chesapeake Bay and its waters. He's published hundreds of papers, books on coastal ecosystems and ecology, and he's presented at international, national, regional conferences and meetings. He also he has been leading the Commission's Science and Technology Working Group. He's going to speak with us today about some of the new initiatives at UMCES.
Great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Amy. Hello to ECO. Like Amy said, I chair the Science and Technical Work Group of the Maryland Climate Change Commission. So it's good to meet a different group. Our meeting's tomorrow. We're going to be talking about methane again. We're really zooming in on methane these days. And what I was going to do today, what I was asked to do is talk a little bit about this Chesapeake Global Collaboratory Initiative that we have. I'm prepared to share my screen. Don't do meets that often, so let's see, window. There we go. Okay. Are you seeing that full screen?
Sure do. Yep.
Great.
Full screen.
Okay,
Yep.
guys. So first of all, this is a weird name, I must admit. Chesapeake is local. Global is global. It's a juxtaposition, and it's intentional because we think in the Chesapeake, we've got a lot to share and a lot to learn from the rest of the world. And the collaboratory it's a made-up word, of course, but it denotes that we're getting out of the laboratory and collaborating with people within academia and outside academia. And just to give you a little snapshot of the history of our institution, we were founded 99.5 years ago when Reginald Truitt created the Chesapeake Biological Lab at Solomon's Island. And what Reginald did was broke away from College Park, where he was a zoology professor and coach of the NCAA champion lacrosse team. He's in the Lacrosse National Hall of Fame. And because he wanted to work with watermen to study the estuary, to study where freshwater and saltwater meet. And so he formed this lab at Solomons, which was the first regional coastal lab in the world. I'm actually today in Naples, and tomorrow we have a reception at the original, the oldest marine lab in the world, formed in 1872, the Station Zoologique Napoli. And the second oldest was Woods Hole, was the Marine Biological Lab in Woods Hole, where I did my PhD in 1888. But those were what we call oceanography. They were going out and studying the oceans as opposed to studying locally the estuaries. And so this was a real watershed moment. And now every state in the union has one of these, at least one of these labs. Anyway, quickly, what they did is they invented estuarine science. They understand the physics, chemistry, biology, and geology of where freshwater and saltwater meet. Then in 1972, Tropical Storm Agnes came through, and all of a sudden we realized it had probably been happening in the 60s, but it was very apparent in 72 when we lost most of the aquatic grasses and lots of oysters went away, is that we need to understand eutrophication, the over-enrichment of nutrients, the nutrient pollution into the estuary. So that launched a whole series of research and eventually formed the Chesapeake Bay program, and UMCES was there helping develop the modeling and the monitoring and the research to support the Chesapeake Bay program. And then in 2015, the pretty big initiative, the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative, where citizen science became part and parcel of everyday business with the Bay program. So now we have hundreds of citizen science doing all kinds of water quality, SAV watchers, etc., around the watershed. And now we're talking about 2025 launching this Chesapeake Global Collaboratory. And just to give you a heads up of where we are in the state, we've got 6 units scattered around the state. The Chesapeake Biological Lab, the original there at Solomons, but we also have Horn Point Lab on the Eastern Shore, Appalachian Lab up in Frostburg, the Institute of Marine Environmental Technology downtown Baltimore, Integration Application Network in Annapolis, and then Maryland Sea Grant on the College Park campus. But what you see here are these orange dots, and these are where we're going to be putting the Chesapeake Global Collaboratory. I'll start with the one at Solomons because we're going to break ground within a month or two for a new building that we're putting up in Solomons to have our data science, our cyber infrastructure and data scientists, so we can handle big data. And then we're working in Annapolis to create a place to convene people in a variety of different ways. This is a historic building called the Shaw House, which is built in 1720. It's on State Circle and on Main Street. It goes through to both streets, and the Main Street entrance is the one on the bottom there, which I call convener. The second level, the intellectual catalyst, is where our science communicators and science integrators will be. Then we have a very nice conference room with stained glass windows up in the top, where we're going to host folks in particularly in modern hybrid fashion. Now we're starting to envision what we would do on the Main Street side. This was we had an architect draw this up. We have skylights, we have a lot of glass. Now Maryland Historical Trust has said we got a little too much glass. We need to be about 50% glass, so we're going to have to cover some of that up. But the concept is we want an inviting space. We want people that walk up and down Main Street to learn something about Chesapeake Bay. And because if you think about it, people in Annapolis, they're starving for something to do. They're eating their ice cream, looking at T-shirts or real estate. It'd be great if they could look at something going on in the Bay. We could have some touch screens and some films. We can have real-time data streaming in, etc. That was the concept, and we launched that back in September 2023. And then we started talking about doing this, starting to focus in on this, and we actually started this conversation in late February, but then look what happened in March, the Key Bridge. And one of the things that we immediately jumped on is that this became quite relevant for the story of the sediments in Baltimore Harbor. So this is a cross section of Chesapeake Bay going through the Baltimore Harbor and over to the eastern shore. And what you see here is that the natural depth of the bay is relatively shallow. 35 feet is the deepest that you get up in that part of the bay. But with the modern shipping that we have with the Panamax fleet, the fleet that's expanded in width and in depth to go through the modern Panama Canal, you need 50 feet of clearance. And that becomes a limiting factor. So what we need is dredging to maintain that 50-foot controlling depth. And that dredging happens every year, regardless of it's just naturally going to fill in. So you just have to do this. So we were sitting in the World Trade Center, just had a meeting earlier today. I did it virtually in the same room up in the World Trade Center, looking out over the harbor, talking about the dredge material management program. Is where you put all that sediment that collects in the bottoms of those channels, not just in the harbor, but of course the entire approach of Chesapeake Bay. We have to dredge in the mouth of Chesapeake Bay quite a bit. In fact, you think that'd be deeper next to the ocean, but in fact there are tidal shoals that form, and so you have to dredge there. You have to dredge all the way up and down the main stem. So you got to put the dirt somewhere. So right after the bridge collapse, we quickly assembled the scientists who had been working actively researching Inner Harbor, and we put together a statement that we're united in our desire to aid the massive effort underway to restore the port. We're offering assistance and advice and for the entire process of reconstruction. So that resulted in us being asked to help staff the Unified Command Environmental Unit, which was led by Suzanne Dorsey, one of our graduates, in fact, and MDE. So we started looking at what have we done in the harbor? What do we know about the harbor? And we realized quickly that we've had for about 4 decades now lots of research going on, particularly in the sediments, sediment resuspension, sediment mapping, toxicants that are in the sediments, the mercury, the pHs, and nowadays the more modern contaminants, the PFAs. And even to the point where Sea Grant, one of our units, did a Chesapeake Quarterly. This is like it's a magazine, really. And they started talking about what's happening when you bring big ships into Baltimore. And look at the title of one of the pages, Big Boats, Narrow Channels. Well, if you read one of the accounts in here by one of the pilots that was interviewed to make this special issue, he said, mentioned that at one point they lost power temporarily, and it turned out it didn't end up with a tragedy that we had with the Dolly, but it was foreshadowing what the event that did happen. And so there's a lot of interest now in, and has been for some time now, of what do we do with these sediments and how do we handle them? And, innovative reuse is now a big topic. There are 2 major sites where sediments are collected and stored for the Baltimore Harbor portion of the dredging, and that is Masonville Cove and Cox Creek. And Cox Creek is specifically, and it's really near the southern terminus of the Key Bridge. It's really focused on reuse, beneficial reuse, all kinds of interesting ideas being tested. And then, we've got maps of where we've got metal accumulation. This turns out, the Sparrows Point with Trade Point Atlantic, taking that over and developing it. They want to do some dredging in there for Bear Creek, and that's one of the most contaminated parts of the sediment from historical use of industrial development. One of our faculty is involved in lots to do with ballast water control. This was Mario Tamburi, and with regard to the global shipping network. And this is a paper they wrote a few years ago about what happens, and there's a red dot there in the Suez Canal. If you remember a few years ago, the freighter got blown off course and got lodged and trapped in the Suez Canal. Global implications. The global supply chain is so interdependent on each and every passageway and port that if you disrupt one of those, the ripple effects are truly global and impactful. And so Baltimore Harbor's short, fortunately for us, only a couple months total, but global implications. There's a very recent paper where several of our faculty were looking at the harbor and looking at the accumulation of mercury. This is a problem that we've got in all of our fresh and estuarine and marine waters of Maryland. They're the same problems up in Deep Creek Lake, for example. And that's where total mercury, the THG, Hg is a symbol for mercury, bioaccumulates up the food web. And what they've learned is that if you have a lot of shallow water, that less accumulation occurs in the fish. But if you just have deep water, lots of accumulation. And then secondarily, if you've got a lot of hardened impervious surfaces, a lot more bioaccumulation. So in fact, the harbor, with dredging, maintaining deep water, and hardened shorelines, magnifies the impact of these bioaccumulation in the fish. And we've got a couple graduate students working on are studying the people that fish in the Baltimore Harbor, particularly blue catfish, and the amount of toxicants that they're accumulating. And this is before the bridge incident and a little more sediment disturbance. There's also some really interesting developments in education and environmental literacy, and Baltimore Harbor's been between Living Classrooms and Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and some of our researchers, they're doing a lot of they're learning how to best teach environmental literacy, particularly in this these two urban estuaries, New York and Chesapeake Bay. You might have heard of the Billion Oyster Project they have up in New York. They got that name, that concept, from our oyster hatchery at Horn Point, because last year was 1.7 billion oysters spat on shell. So we can do better than a billion oysters that New York's trying to achieve. And then there's a bunch of ongoing Baltimore Harbor initiatives. There's the Reimagined Middle Branch. We've got several of our faculty on the Science and Technical Advisory Group. We've also have a graduate student that just graduated. Allie there in the blue jacket is explaining her work with floating wetlands to understand how much nutrient absorption that the organisms that are on the cages that sit underneath the marsh are bioaccumulating and removing from the water column. So he's just finished her master's and starting a PhD, and this is the floating wetlands artist conception there on the left of the one next to the National Aquarium. And then Eric Schott, our star swimmer here in the leaping into the harbor last summer. There's a cute little YouTube if you want to watch some of these guys jumping into the harbor to show that it's last summer was a particularly high water quality, really good water quality, and they now test on a daily basis, so you could safely swim in the harbor, which has been a goal for the Healthy Harbor Initiative for some time. So all of that is a preamble to the fact that I'm advertising. And the advertisement is that we would like to have a Baltimore Harbor Symposium this October at our Institute of Marine Environmental Technology, right on at Pier 5, right on the harbor. It's where we did the launch on the left of the Chesapeake Global Collaboratory. And interesting, or just not the things we're capitalizing on, is that we've got a project currently in which we are comparing Chesapeake Bay to Manila Bay in Philippines, to Tokyo Bay in Japan, Sexay Lagoon in Japan, and the Goa coast, the port on the southwest coast of India. So we're going to have those people, representatives. We're going to have Philippine, Japanese, Indian, and in fact Norway is another partner. They don't have a study site, but we're going to have Norwegians attend this as well. So so we're very excited about folks here in the Chesapeake, but we can learn from others. We also just had a visitor from Macau, the little former Portuguese colony next to Hong Kong, come through, and they're promising to send a delegation as well. So we'll have local and global comparison opportunities to try to understand how to do better on this front. And the other thing I want to say just about this, with this climate lens that we need to be focused on at all times, is that when you start talking about sediments and using sediments in beneficial use manner, there's some real opportunities for carbon sequestration. There's a chance to bury carbon or change the pH, the alkalinity, to manipulate the seawater chemistry to allow it to absorb carbon dioxide. So I think there's some, and if you use sediments to create marshes, salt marshes are the best blue carbon. Salt marshes, seagrass beds, mangroves, we don't have them, they're too tropical, but those ecosystems are particularly good at sequestering carbon, making peat, organic material, which is refractory and doesn't end up in the atmosphere. So those are the things that we think we should always have that eye on when we're trying to look at opportunities to utilize sediments that come from this ongoing dredging. So I hope, and we would love, Delegate Stein, we would love to have some political leadership come. We had our secretary for the collaboratory, we had Secretary McElwain, Secretary Kurtz, and Secretary Addix come along. It'd be great to have some political representation for this Baltimore Harbor Symposium we want to do in October. So that's what I have. I just appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this Chesapeake Global Collaboratory. I think it's the biggest thing to hit UMCES for in that 100-year history. It's one of the 5 big ones. I think we could be launching ourselves to a new. And this is a faculty initiative. They're very excited about it. We're going to use big data. We're going to bring new voices into the conversation, and we're going to use a co-production kind of program where we're going to transdisciplinary in the geeky science world to co-produce materials with the community.
Well, that's amazing, Dr. Dennison. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Dennison? Oh, Delegate Stein? Yours went up right away.
Well, thanks, Bill, for your presentation. And just to follow up on your suggestion, if you could send me information about the Harbor Symposium, and I certainly, schedule a meeting, would like to attend and can circulate it as well.
Excellent. We'll do it first thing.
That's great. Next hand up, Jim Joyner.
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks very much for that presentation and from the perspective of the Maryland Department of Transportation, we really want to echo your sentiments about sediment and about how much we've enjoyed and appreciated the work that we've been using dredge material in places like Poplar Island to help create additional wildlife habitat, and the work that we've done in collaboration with the Maryland Environmental Service and others, Army Corps of Engineers, and as well. And in terms of the reuse of dredge material, you may know that we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers on the Mid-Bay Island project, which is James and Barron. Yeah. They're going to restore about 2,000 acres there that is hopefully going to restore those islands, build some habitat, and maybe even protect that shoreline a little bit down in Dorchester. So I think to your point, there's a lot of great uses for dredge material that can be had as part of the effort to keep the channels clear and open.
Great point, and I think that's a really I like that you added the point. Not only are you creating habitat and marsh in particular that can sequester carbon, but you're protecting shoreline from erosion at the same time. So good point there.
Right, Susan, you have your hand up. You're muted.
Thank you, Dr. Dennison. That was fascinating. And we appreciate your coming today. So my question for you is, how might the commission participate in the symposium in October?
Well, that's a good question. I definitely think I want the commission to be engaged in this discussion. I think this creates an opportunity. We need to have a green harbor. We've talked about electrifying. There's discussions with the infrastructure on the beach, on land, but also when the ships are docked, to plug them in instead of burning diesel. And then there's a project that we've got recently kicked off last week. We've got a scientist specialized in nitrogen. It was Dr. Shin Chung from Appalachian Lab, and she just got a grant, for a 5-year grant from the National Science Foundation to look at green ammonia as shipping fuel. The idea of green ammonia is ammonia produced by clean energy, by renewables, and use and replace diesel and fossil fuel with ammonia as a shipping fuel. Now, I don't want to get too excited about this because we're dealing with the over production of ammonia for fertilizer as degrading the bay. So there's some environmental safeguards we have to build into this. But she's launched this initiative to understand the implications of green ammonia. But I think it's like 3% of the atmospheric CO2 release is from shipping. So it's a significant number. It's not to be trifled with, because if that map I showed earlier, there's so many ships going in and out of these harbors around the world all the time, 24/7, that this is a significant contribution to global greenhouse gases, and not just CO2, by the way. They burn some nasty stuff on those ships. So that's something I think would be interesting. So we certainly want to bring her team into that discussion as well, because we got to have a clean harbor to be able to just as part of the climate initiative.
Well, perhaps there'd be a place for the commission as a sponsor of some sort. Just something to think about. I think it'd be exciting and a good opportunity for the commission to become known.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's a really good point. I like that, Susan. Yeah. Come back. I've got a very exciting transition in 11 days. And 11 days from now, we have a new permanent UMSI's president, Dr. Fernando Moraes Wilhelm. And Fernando's well known to College Park. He was director of this Essex Initiative, which is a partnership between University of Maryland, NASA, and NOAA. His daughter, I taught his daughter. She did her master's with us. And so he knows us. He's coming now from George Mason. So he's going to take on the role of the head of the university, thank goodness. And I get to work on stuff that I care about, which is this global collaboratory and this Shaw House in Annapolis. So I'm really looking forward to 11 days from now.
Congratulations.
I escaped.
All right, Donald.
Yeah, congratulations in advance, and thank you for the presentation. Wondering if there have been any discussions or efforts with educators throughout the state of Maryland or around Baltimore to connect your work with educational resources that either you all develop or maybe develop in conjunction with educators, because really fascinating topics. My mind was going to a few different places when you spoke, and so I'm just wondering about those connections, whether it is in their classroom, on a site visit, or even in like the education lab at IMET.
Let me just back up 1 second to tell you that we grade ourselves. We evaluate our faculty's performance quite uniquely. Most of the universities in the world, research, teaching, and service, so the things that people get graded on. We have a different method. We call it discovery, integration, application, and teaching. And so the integration application is to use our science and make it useful for society. The teaching is one of the things we want to connect with that. And like your question, how can we take this and make it part of our education? So what we're doing right now, well, what we did first of all was during COVID, when we couldn't do much, we created a professional platform called edX. edX was started by MIT and Harvard, and dozens of universities around the world sign up for it. And they're called MOOCs, Massive Open Line Courses. So anybody could take it for free. But if you want to get certified, you have to pay a nominal tuition. But 12,000 people have signed up and taken this from 170 countries around the world. So we're trying to democratize knowledge and put it out there to broader groups. So that was our first foray. So we have 4 courses: science communication, environmental report cards, science advisory, and innovative approaches. And now we're developing 3 new courses in partnership with University of Maryland College Park's engineering. And that's on environmental project management. It actually comes out when we were talking with the Maryland Environment Service and some of the companies, some of the environmental engineering companies based in Maryland, about what they need for their incoming, who they want to hire, what kind of training they need. And they said, we need people with field experience and project management experience. So we're creating this new program to address that. And we created a partnership with Frostburg State University for a master's in environmental management. That's a 5-year program that we just are finishing we just finished in May, the first full academic year. So we'll start seeing some graduates coming out next year. So we're partnering with College Park, partnering with Frostburg. I think when we get into the Baltimore Harbor, I want to partner with Living Classrooms. They have such a impressive program locally there. I want to start looking at, I've been talking to Coppin State and Morgan State because they're in the watershed, so to speak. And Towson's got a new environmental want to launch. So I think for us, we're the smallest of the 12 universities in the system of Maryland, but we want to be the connectors. We want to be the conveners and facilitators. And Laura, absolutely, I overlooked the aquarium. I mean, we're that I just kind of like, it's assumed. I mean, we're neighbors. We have staff, some of your staff in our building. So yeah, so we definitely are always in partnership with Aquarium. So yeah, I think we have some really great educational opportunities ahead. And I think Baltimore is a great test case for that. I think this is one of the things I noticed in Unified Command is that the Coast Guard, the feds, the Corps, they're all about, they don't think about the communities that are part of that harbor, that are, and particularly the overlooked, the Curtis Bay, the things that we need to do so better. So I think one of the things that we can do is make sure we have more inclusive, that the harbor isn't treated just as big business, that of the inner harbor or the shipping, but rather a harbor galvanize the city and that reimagine Middle Branch is just exciting. One of the things, and I got a secret agenda here. We do this annual Chesapeake Bay report card, and Baltimore has gotten the worst grade from the day we started 17 years ago. Now that's interesting because it's in spite of the fact it's gotten the worst grade, it is definitively getting better now because, and so I think raising Baltimore Harbor is a rising tide floats all boats, and I think it'll raise the whole profile of the bay by improving Baltimore Harbor.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Dennison. That was fabulous. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to raise your hand now. Otherwise, we will. I'm sure it's what, 9, what, I don't even know how late it is there, 8 or 9, 10 o'clock.
I'm in Naples, Italy, where we're finishing a seagrass conference tomorrow. I've got a couple of workshops I'm leading, but it was, we hosted, it's an international, every 2 years it goes around the world. 2 years ago, we hosted in Annapolis. It was, or the conference, it wasn't quite.
I think we're losing.
This one is the biggest.
That's great. I think
sorry.
we're losing you
Anyway.
too. So it's almost
Thank
10 o'clock there. We're going to let you get back to it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Dennison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, you all let me know if I have some connection issues too. Sometimes mine may go out as well. But let's go ahead and move on in the agenda. And now we're actually kind of moving on to the education part of the agenda. Even though Dr. Dennison's presentation can actually fit in that as well. And I'm going to actually try to talk to him as well to see if we can get some collaboration. Like Susan said, with the commission, I would love to have him, collaborate with Bowie State as well, even though we're not in Baltimore, but we're close. So, so the next part of our agenda is kind of talk a little bit about our Climate Education Week, which all of you who are members are very familiar with this process. As a matter of fact, some of you are actually part of our subgroup. So I'm not going to be able to give all the details, lack of time. But for those of you that are new or you haven't really, learned much about it, the short version is 2 years ago, we actually started something called the Maryland Climate Teach-In. Well, I say 2 years ago, technically it was last year. And it was actually more so mirroring the worldwide Teach-In, which is an effort created by Bard College. I'm not sure how long ago that was, but we wanted to create something specifically for Maryland. And we started this last year. We had quite a few participants, but we were just starting off. We were getting started. This year, we actually had twice as many as what we had last year for the Maryland Climate Teach-In event. I'm sorry, 3 times. I'm sorry, thanks, Amy. Yeah, you're right, 3 times as many. So we are actually looking to continue to improve that for the next year and have even more participants. From that effort, we also moved to something called Climate Education Week in Maryland. And it connects to the Climate Teach-In, but it's also a separate event. Climate Education Week was something that we in this work group actually initiated to have a week in Maryland dedicated to education and discussions about climate change. The idea was for this to be April 1st through the 7th. And we actually, our first step was to try to get a declaration from the governor's office. So thanks to our own Susan Casey, she was able to get some language together, send to the governor's office. And we actually were very successful. We actually did get a declaration from Governor Moore's office declaring the first week of April as Climate Education Week. But that's only temporary. So what we really wanted to do was make this more of a mainstay, more of a permanent fixture in Maryland. In order to do that, you have to kind of go through the General Assembly, through the House and the Senate. So on that note, we did this year. I will say we were fairly successful, not all the way through. But we actually were able to, again, thanks to Susan, because she puts together all this legislative language, which I would have no clue on how to do any of this. We actually were able to create House Bill 993. And our own, I'll say our, meaning the commission's Delegate Dana Stein was actually a champion for us in terms of getting that bill passed. Delegate Stein, I know he's been a member of the House, and correct me if I'm wrong, Delegate Stein, I think since 2007, is that right? So many committees and subcommittees, I can't name them all, but I know Environmental and Transportation, I believe, committee is one of the biggest ones. And he's a Speaker Pro Tem, which is almost pretty much number 2 in charge. And he represents District 11B, which is Baltimore County. It's actually my county, close to my area, but not quite. So we actually spoke before the House in March. And, thanks to Delegate Stein, I think this is for the Health and Government Operations Committee, I believe it was, that brought this bill. And we were successful in passing the House. Then we went to the Senate. We did not have to do oral testimony for the Senate, but we did the written testimony for both the House and the Senate. And again, Delegate Stein was a champion in the Senate as well. So it got stalled in the Senate. It did not go past that point. And so therefore, we wanted to have Delegate Stein here today to kind of just, mention some of the things that maybe some recommendations or ways that maybe we can improve. We do know we had a catastrophic event that happened around this time, like Dr. Dennison talked about, which was the Key Bridge collapse. So that could have played a factor. But Delegate Stein is here today and again, he's a member of the commission, and we'd love to hear from you, Delegate Stein, on what you'd like to tell us, any debriefing, any notes, what you think we could do different, what we did well, and that sort of thing. So Delegate Stein, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Jabari, and thank you to the work group for all you're doing in education and outreach on climate. During our testimony, especially when all of us had a chance to speak in the House, we talked about how Jabari, Rebecca Rear, Susan was there. I forget who was the other person on our panel, but we all talked about how young folks, students are eager to get more information, not both about sort of what the issue is, but especially how they can take action. So having our bill, which would say that the governor every year will proclaim the first week of April as Climate Education Week, would be a very good thing. And, you know, the bill just had a couple items elaborating on the purpose of it, just says that residents, the proclamation would urge residents of all ages to participate in educational activities and initiatives that promote an awareness of climate change and take action toward the state's climate commitments. And you know, every bill has what's called a fiscal note prepared for it, and you know, it said there'd be no cost to the state to implement this. You know, largely, you know, leveraging off all the activities that are already taking place, and the resources that the commission and ECO would be able to provide. There wouldn't be any costs. So very good response in the House. I give credit to, you know, my panelists who were there, fellow panelists who were there. And then it did stall in the Senate. There was one question from a senator, which may have been the reason why it didn't move, which was, you know, our annual 90-day session typically ends, well, it always ends after the first week of April, which is when we're saying Climate Education Week would be. And so that senator was saying, is there some way to change the date to make it more accommodating so that legislators could become involved? And I know there's good reason for the first week of April to be named the Climate Education Week. Yes, and as Susan is saying, because April is Earth Month. So I'd very much like to reintroduce the bill. I need to reach out to the senator who asked that question, which I suspect is the reason why it didn't move forward, and see if there's some way to, you know, to get her support for the bill. I know we really want to keep it as the first week of April. So if there's something else that can be put into the bill to supplement it so that that senator feels that legislators can be involved. So I think, you know, that's a good thing. The goal, the question related to encouraging legislators to be involved with climate activities. So maybe there's a way that we can add to what we're proposing that would address our concern. So I appreciate ECO support for this, and especially I remember that day in the House. It was a very much delayed hearing, so everyone had to stay hours. So it was like, maybe, was it like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock or something that our bill was heard, and but they passed it out that evening, and the House committee full House did it a couple days later, and you know, we just need to you know, figure out a way to get it through the Senate, which hopefully shouldn't be too challenging. But I appreciate, you know, the opportunity to partner with ECO on this.
Thank you, Delegate Steiner. We appreciate it too. So I think, well, you already know the importance of why we chose that particular time. So does this really mean that the process would be the same? Again, we have to do pretty much everything in the same order? Okay.
Yes, though. Yes, I mean, since the House has already passed it, the hearing before the Health and Government Operations Committee may be almost pro forma, in that, you know, we introduce the bill, we don't have to present as much testimony because we can say this passed in the same form in 2024. So, but then we'll have to take it to the Senate and get it passed there. If there's a way we can get a Senate sponsor, and, you know, we might think about, you know, friends we have on that committee, the EEE committee in the Senate. So maybe we can find a Senate sponsor to cross-file with that just makes the chances better.
Okay. Excellent. We have any questions from anyone? Comments? Susan? Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah. Yes, thanks. My question is, might we be able to get some minority sponsors too? Because apparently this bill, even though we only had one sponsor and it was you, it was kind of earmarked as a Democrat piece of legislation only. And it was put up on websites that way. And was like, well, yeah, Delegate Sund's a Democrat. Doesn't make this bill a Democrat bill, you know? So was wondering if maybe we could somehow get some of
Sure.
the members of the opposite aisle.
Yeah, we can certainly, especially since we have the bill, as drafted from last year, I can put out a request very early in session for co-sponsors and maybe think of, at least a couple members of the GOP who might be interested in signing on. Sure, that always helps.
That would be so great. If there are some reasonable ones in Maryland, there should be.
Yeah, no, I mean, there have been, in other climate bills, we've gotten some bipartisan votes. So hopefully we can, get some Republican sponsors.
Awesome.
Great point, Susan.
And I think we also need more advocates. So we can work on that separately through our membership.
Great.
Well, we have plenty of
Very
time.
excited, very excited that you're going to do it again for us. And we just can't thank you enough. We know how busy you are. You're a speaker. I mean, you're the speaker pro tem,
Yeah.
and as well as, having a million of your own bills. And this was so meaningful to us, and to have your support, and you do that for us in the commission was just outstanding. We can't thank you enough.
Oh,
And
thank
now-
you. My
And
pleasure.
now I have one more question. Will you tell us about your book that I bought, and I want you to sign it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking, but this was, I wrote a short novel about climate change called Fire in the Wind, and it's printed in 2010. And I wrote it because, at least at the time, or a couple of years before, at the national level, at least, there wasn't much action on climate change. So it's not a dystopian novel. I mean, not, it's based in 2036 when I say, major impacts of climate change have come in. And it focuses on, I came up with 3 characters. One was a farmer in the Midwest who's, farming has lost his livelihood because of higher temperatures. An environmental scientist based in New York, and then have to have a government insider. So I had someone who worked for the White House, and I had fun writing it. It was hardly a bestseller, but it's there's it's one of probably a fair number of books on climate futurism, I guess, for lack of a better word, and had a number of being a Marylander, of course, I had to have a number of scenes set in Maryland. So it was fun to write. It definitely needs some updating, but I don't know if I'll get to that.
Yeah, and then a movie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you might have been ahead of your time, because there are a lot of new shows out there that actually talk about the future, how things will look with climate change. There's one in particular, I think it came on Apple TV. I can't think of the name of it right now. Maybe The Changeling. Does that sound right to anybody? Anyway, it was very it was a unique outlook on how things will look based on how, the rate that climate change is going. So you wrote this book 14 years ago, so you already kind of forecasted some of this. So
Oh, thanks.
yeah. I think, Amy, do you want to say something? You're on mute.
There you go. I just had a quick question. What can we do to support you on this bill? And are there other climate change related bills or topics that you're working on that we could support or we should know about?
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly for this bill, when it comes back up, I mean, especially in the, I think it'll definitely pass the House again. The Senate, the relevant committee, Triple E, education, energy and the environment. I think that's what Triple E stands for. Maybe, as we go to the Senate, and hopefully we'll have so many crossfiles in the Senate, maybe we can, work to do outreach to the members of that committee, to get their support. And then, I certainly will have other climate related legislation. Another bill of mine, which I introduced this past session, but which I'll be bringing back. And in fact, I was talking about it just about 2 hours ago with the mitigation work group, concerning, the funding for climate initiatives is a big need. So I had a bill that would have imposed a very modest fee on any natural gas and coal that enters the state, either for consumption or for export. And there was some interest in it in the House. It did not move forward, but I'm definitely going to bring it back. It would generate $250 to $300 million a year for programs identified under the Climate Pollution Reduction Plan. So certainly, if ECO wants to get involved in supporting that, and I'm sure there'll be other good climate bills, but that would be great.
Absolutely. Do you have a bill number we should be focusing on if we want to reach out to our legislators yet, or?
No, not yet. I probably will pre-file, but that's not until not until the fall.
Okay. So we can just watch for that,
Yeah.
and then we can contact our own legislators to support it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that information.
Oh, good. Great. Thanks.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you like, I did a PowerPoint for MWG today about my bill, which I can send.
That would be great. We can send it to our members.
Wait,
Okay.
would you send it to me, please,
Mhm.
Delegate? Because I
Sure.
also have to post it on the MWG website in the meeting materials, and then
Okay.
we can use it as well at ECO. That
Yeah,
way.
we'll do.
Share
sure.
the slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any more comments, questions for Delegate Stein? Okay. Well, Delegate Stein, you're welcome to stay for the next 30 minutes if you want, or if you have to go, that's fine.
Yeah, no, thanks. I do have to drop off for another call, but
Okay.
thank you again for the opportunity to present today.
Thanks so much, Delegate
Nice seeing
Stein.
everyone. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.
He's so awesome.
He is awesome. I'm actually, just give me a minute. It's going to take me a minute to type all this in, but I'm typing in the Triple E committee members into the chat. If any of us
Okay.
have, these are our legislators, we can identify that and reach out to them.
Okay.
Just give me it's going to take me a minute. There's quite a few of them.
Okay.
So do we want to move on to the next item while I'm doing that?
Yes.
Which
What-
I think is the
Mhm.
MACE. It's the MACE conference. We were going to just update everybody on that and then start talking about the teach-in 2025 teach-in.
Yes. Well, we were given the opportunity to be able to present this to now remind me what MACE stands for again, please.
Maryland Mid-Atlantic
Climate,
Climate
Climate-
Change Association, right?
no, educators, I think.
Educators. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
All right, so this is basically I don't know if we want to use the word consortium of different organizations throughout the Mid-Atlantic, and they're having a virtual conference coming up. I believe it is next week, and so they've invited us to give a presentation, myself, Amy, and Susan, as part of their conference. So we will be we're putting together a PowerPoint now, and we'll be presenting some of the successes, results of our success with this Climate Education Week. And I believe Susan might have been wanting to allude to this, that we would like to replicate this in other states. Hopefully, maybe one day it'll go nationwide. So that's the ultimate goal.
Mhm.
And I don't know, do we want I don't think there's a way to include the link because I think you have to pay for the sessions,
pay.
right? So, okay, it's a fee for the sessions. But we'll update you on that. That'll be a week from today, I believe, next Thursday, June 27th. Anything else I need to add to that?
Not that I can think of. I just think it's a great opportunity for us to get the word out directly to educators. And we're hoping that there are other Maryland educators on the conference as well. So we'll be reaching out to possibly future participants as well as other states.
Right.
I just
Okay.
put the link to the conference site up.
All
It
right.
is a
Thank you.
very, very inexpensive conference. It's $25 for 3 days. So it's really good deal for anybody who's interested.
And it's all online.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure you could probably use this as professional development. I would think too. So.
Yep.
Ask your workplaces to pay for it if you're not able to or don't want to. Okay, let's move on to the agenda. So the next item we want to actually discuss is the Maryland Teacher of the Year. So going back to what we had just discussed, having the Climate Education Week in Maryland, one of the items that helped us tremendously was having a spokesperson. And this year we actually were able to get the Maryland Teacher of the Year, Mary Kay Connerton, who actually served as the spokesperson for Climate Education Week. We had a kickoff event. Again, it was a great event. Secretary of Environment showed up as well. We had all kinds of things. We had a yoga session. We had a presentation from Compostology, which were young ladies who actually started their own compost company, basically in Maryland. And it was a great event. So we want to see if we can continue this going forward to have the Maryland Teacher of the Year to serve as a spokesperson for this week. So we kind of wanted to reach out to who's our Department of Education person.
Katie.
Katie, yes.
Tady. Okay, yes, yeah.
Hi,
yeah.
it's Toddy.
Toddy.
Hi.
Thank
Heidi.
you.
Just think of like a
Sorry,
hot toddy.
Toddy.
That's how you say it.
Sorry, Todd.
Gotcha,
Hot
gotcha.
Toddy. Gotcha.
Okay. So we reached out to you already. So I think we're going to try to see what we can do with this. Do you have any updates for us?
I talked with our senior executive director of the Office of Communications and Community Engagement. Our office handles the Maryland Teacher of the Year. It falls under our partnerships branch. So we've done that for several years. I, however, am new to working with the Maryland Teacher of the Year. So I'm more interested in hearing like what ideas you would have as what that would look like. I see what Mary Kay has done this year. Would you like it to look the same moving forward? Like what role would the Teacher of the Year play?
That's a good question. And I think that's something that maybe our subgroup can probably define a little bit more going forward, because again, this is something we kind of lucked up on. And Mary Kay Connerton, she also had a passion for this. So that also helped because she actually is a wellness instructor. So she kind of tied in the health and wellness aspect to climate change. She got her students involved. Her school was actually where we held our kickoff event. She was Annapolis High School. So we would love to, well, you know what, I don't want to say everything because we haven't really figured all of that out yet, but we want the person to be the face of this
Effort. We put them on our marketing materials. Like we had a fact sheet about this for folks, and that was included in registration packets at the Mayo conference. And we had social media posts, and we had Mary Kay's photo on it as our spokesperson.
and op-ed.
She did an op-ed for us, and she met with us pretty frequently and gave us her insight and ideas and thoughts and helped us kind of craft it to best meet her education styles and topics. And I mean, it could really work with any educator, art, math, science, social study, like climate change can work in any topic area. So I don't think it needs to be restricted that way. She also shared the information with the other educators she talked to the other Maryland Teachers of the Year, or she kind of launched her and used her network to get it out there as
Right.
well.
Because I believe the Maryland Teacher of the Year comes from the different counties. Is there like a county-wide Teacher of the Year? And that's how you get the actual statewide Teacher of the Year. Is that right?
Yes, so
Okay.
every county has their own process to where there is one Teacher of the Year for every county in Maryland, and then, or for every school system in Maryland. And then there is it's narrowed down to 7,
Okay.
and then a panel chooses the Maryland Teacher of the Year, and that won't happen for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fall, right?
Hasn't been chosen yet. Yeah, it happens in the fall. So we don't know who will be the next one. That'll be up to the panel of judges to decide. So all of this sounds interesting. Obviously, it's not a decision I can make.
Mhm. Right.
Right.
But I could definitely take this back to our senior executive director, and we can also talk about ways in which that can work together. Because I think, it would be, if it worked out that way, that we had the Maryland Teacher of the Year be the spokesperson, that's great. But we may not even want to limit ourselves in that way. There may be other opportunities for the local school system Teachers of the Year to participate. So I think it's worth a further conversation to see what makes the most sense, what's the most beneficial, because, environmental education, we also have environmental education, learning standard, there are all types of ways that we could do something. And I think this might be an offline outside of this committee conversation to work out what exactly those details would look like, how we can make this work the best. I mean, climate education week and the climate teach-in, that all sounds like something we'd be interested in participating in. So, let's talk more. But I just wanted to get a sense of what your expectations were.
Okay.
So I can start that conversation on my end, and we can then continue to talk further.
Yeah, I think an offline meeting would be great. Like if if there's interest there, we could kind of give a little bit more information. I mean, we have the slide presentation we're giving out at MACE already that kind of describes the whole the way the climate teaching went this year with all the data and the results and things like that. So, I mean, we do have some information we could share that might be helpful. It does outline a little bit of, we kind of have a list of what Mary Kay did for us. And so, yeah, definitely things like that. And the County Teachers of the Year is a really great thought. I mean, even if we just got the opportunity to do like a Zoom meeting and introduce them to this concept would be an advance
Well,
than what we have.
Excuse me, remember Mary Kay did that because the Teacher of the Year gets to meet with all the county Teachers of the Year in an event. This was in Annapolis, and when they got together, she gave them the spiel.
Yeah, but I mean, this would be, separate from other things going on, like basically schedule a meeting to introduce this
Just for
to
that.
them. Yeah, I think it would be very useful.
Yeah. That you mean just that one topic?
Just that one topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Donald's got his hand up too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Toddy.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I'm getting more information about exactly what the duties of the Teacher of the Year are. I think that's something else that we're working on, is making sure that we are very clear in our expectations of our educators, because they already have a very busy and important job, and adding this on top of it, we don't want anything to be overwhelming for them.
Right.
So as we're having these conversations over the summer, I think it's a perfect time to talk about what we would do in April. We've got lots of time to see what would be the best fit, but Donald has had his hand raised, so
Hi, no, it was just a really quick comment. I really like the idea of reaching out to, and some of this has already happened, but reaching out to the state Teacher of the Year, Educator of the Year, as well as the local or LEA level Educators of the Year. And one potential piece that, and you know, this could be large or small in terms of how they connect, but even advocating for a climate change action plan for their local school district. We have a plan in Prince George's County in place, and if it's not helping to establish a plan or advocating for the establishment of a plan, it could be the implementation of a plan for that district. Because I know several other districts, and some have been on these calls, have mentioned that they are trying to move forward with that effort in their county or their school system. So just a thought out there that, you know, they could play a role in being an advocate for moving forward that work. And then it will be an opportunity to sort of multiply the impact at every county that has that Teacher of the Year.
Well, that's a good point. It's another thing to, you know, bring up and in a further conversation about all of this. But I like all of these ideas, and it gives us a really good starting point.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for that, Donna. Susan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just real quickly, I was just going to suggest to Toddy that they do have a meeting when at the end of her reign as the Maryland Teacher of the Year, because she said she was really surprised that she had these official duties, because they never really talked about it before she was named Teacher of the Year. And so she'd already promised us, so then she was super busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are reevaluating just kind of the whole process. You know, it's time. Every couple of years, you want to look back, have a discussion about what worked well, what didn't, what might need to change, what things that are new that we may be looking towards doing with our Teacher of the Year, or things we maybe don't need to do anymore. So it's definitely all in a conversation that we've been having in our office about how do we make sure that we're, you know, continuously improving and making this position as, you know, beneficial for all involved.
Okay, makes sense. So I guess we'll be following up hopefully soon. To schedule. Thank you so much, Toddy. We appreciate you.
Oh, and yes, I'd just like to say, great meeting. I think I'm gonna have to jump off though, because I have to get to my daughter's preschool graduation.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yes. But yeah, let's talk next week, and maybe we can get a date on the calendar and start the discussions.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I would send me any notes you have.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Take care.
All right. Well, we're running a little bit behind schedule, which is fine because the presentations have been amazing, and so is the discussions. Next on our agenda was, and I'm wondering whether we should almost put this off till next time, because I don't know if we have enough time.
That might be a good idea. Yeah.
To talk about, instead of talking about the communications, Laura Banksy did a great job. Laura Banksy did a great job on drafting the welcome kit, and Susan included it as a link in the agenda. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, please do, especially our new members. We're basically trying to create this for ECO, but also as a template for the other working groups and the main commission to use when new members come on board. Both Jabari and I, when we joined the working group, you kind of feel like you're just learning is on the fly. So we really wanted to kind of pull that together and give folks an idea of kind of how it works, and document that so that, you know, you have a kind of a clear understanding about how the commission itself works and what we contribute to the commission.
Yeah, but Amy, in all fairness, when you came on board, ECO was still forming. You know, Jody was the one who was really who really got it going, and we didn't have a very good membership, and so
it was very few people.
So by the time you guys came on, you know, things were starting to roll, And
Mhm.
so we didn't have anything to tell you at that time. So not much to tell you. And what we told you, right, Jody? But anyway, it's just so much better now. Thanks to Jody and to you two for your leadership, because it's really significant now. And we're really doing some cool stuff.
Yes.
And we're
Thank
really
you.
getting the attention of the commission and the the membership and those who count. So
Yeah.
thank you.
So let's
We'll keep it up.
yeah. So and
Yes.
we had that fact sheet updates and social media. That was all communications outreach and stuff. We'll push that off to the next meeting as
Okay.
part of our discussion. What we do want to talk about is recommendations, because recommendations, so basically every working group makes recommendations to the commission to be included in their annual report. These recommendations are recommendations to the governor at the executive level or to the legislature for legislative action. Over the history, ECO usually submits between 1 and 3 recommendations. One of our recommendations this year will definitely be the Climate Education Week legislation, to continue to resubmit that and to hopefully get that through the legislature this
Actually,
year.
you don't have to. I don't think you have to recommend it again. You don't want it to go for a vote again. I think what they
Oh,
do
that's
is,
true.
I think when the recommendations don't pass, they get automatically, moved on to the next year. But you double check that.
Okay, yeah. But the question is, so at our next meeting in August, we are going to have to finalize the language and vote on recommendations, because they are due to the commission in September, by September. It was like the 8th and then the 19th. Yeah, like they have 2 dates. They were really hoping for the 11th and the 9th, the 11th and the 19th. So they were hoping to get them in by the 11th, but if you had to stretch it to the 19th, they would be okay with it. So we really want to take a few minutes to, if anyone hasn't reviewed previous reports, last year's report is up on the commission website. You can take a look at it. ECO had 3, I think we had 3 recommendations last year. So we really need to start talking about that, thinking about that, and we need folks to start submitting ideas for recommendations if we're going to think about them beyond the Climate Education Week.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to open the floor to anyone who has any thoughts on that, or if you'd rather just digest and email us over the course of the next couple weeks, because it takes a while to craft the language, and then we can just edit it and vote on it. But we do have to take a formal vote in August.
Yeah.
So anyone? I mean, it can just be a topic. It doesn't have to be the true language, or it can be a suggestion moving forward something, and then we can move on to that. And it can be anything education, communication, or outreach focused.
It's a whole lot of material
Mm-hmm.
to choose from.
That's the ECO page, and now I'll put up the where our recommendations made it into the annual report on the main commission page. I'll put that up now.
Thank you.
Okay. I know we had a few people to drop off too.
Mm-hmm.
So we might have to do this by email to try to get, I would say, at least 1 to 2 recommendations from each person.
I mean, my one worry is that, and I think last year we ended up doing this, is like having an extra meeting right
Mhm.
before they were due
Yeah.
to get it done.
Well, and that's why I agree. That's why I was suggesting maybe if we email between now and before our next meeting,
Yeah.
so we don't have to create a whole new meeting just for recommendations. Is everybody good with that? Oh, Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
Hey, everybody. So one of the, not that we need to constrain here on our recommendations or the topics that we offer recommendation on, but one of the in the other working groups of the commission, they asked the members to really focus on recommendations or topics about or topics on things that were discussed. right? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of education, communication, and outreach ideas that we all probably have in our heads, but I think it'd be best as we pitch those to the larger commission if we could sort of frame them in the context of this working group had some discussions about this topic, right? So rather than just be anything and all, it's things that this working group sort of discussed or tackled or grappled with and came to some sort of consensus around, rather than just stuff. So, you know, that's all I'd like to say about that.
So it's maybe one idea, and I know I realize maybe not everybody here may remember some of the presentations we had. I mean, I guess those were things that we've actually discussed. We've had presentations on certain topics.
Mhm.
What do you think about that, Amy?
Oh,
Should we, or
that's
Chris?
exactly what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
you know, yes, those presentations were meant to inform and sort of reinforce, you know, our knowledge, but you know, if we could just focus those recommendations on stuff that ECO, you know, at least had on an agenda sometime over the course of the year, rather than just coming in, you know, without a whole lot of discussion about it, would be ideal.
Right, gotcha. So I wonder, is there a way we can provide a list? I don't know if it may be too much to provide the actual presentations, although I guess we have them.
I think, aren't they all on our website?
Yeah, they are. I think they are. So so maybe
Yeah,
we'll send a link out to the
Astrid
group.
has an idea. Astrid's
Oh,
smart.
yeah,
Go ahead, Astrid.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, thank you. I'm just thinking about last year, our recommendations focused a lot on energy efficiency as well as the climate, you know, the week or whatever it was called. I'm thinking that we might want a recommendation more related to the environment or the Chesapeake Bay or something like that, related to, you know, some educational purposes. I mean, we know we have the Climate Corps and, you know, some new initiatives that are federal and from some funders in Maryland. So I think that if we, it would be interesting, and today with Bill's presentation talking about, you know, the sediment and the port and all the initiatives related to the Bay, I think it would be interesting to think about something. I can think about something and bring up something, but I just wanted to put it out there to you guys to see if you think it's a good idea for us to kind of round up something else. Thanks.
I like that.
Thank you. Mhm.
Mhm.
Remember, these are recommendations to the governor and or the General Assembly to do something.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. And last year, not last year, this year during the session, there were several bills that were advocated for related to coastal resilience in Maryland, related to sea level rise, related to inundation. So I think that, you know, that if we kind of, you know, because the implications are for fisheries, the implications are for communities, the implications are for businesses, the implications are for tourism, the implications, you know. So they are really big implications for the whole state in a variety of ways. So I think that I can also look at the bills that I was involved in, that I was aware of, and kind of maybe summarize that in a paragraph and bring it up to us for us to discuss.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and I think that's great, especially in light of the discussion we had today. But we had other folks come in and talk to us about the Chesapeake Bay. We had the Sea Grant Commission come in. I mean, we had quite a few discussions focused on the Bay.
And so that goes to my point about maybe it would be a good idea to point out the website that we have, where we have all the presentations for last year. We only meet
Every other month.
3 times a year, yeah. So so it's not that many. And you know, it's up to you if you want to look at the entire presentation, but I think that may be a starting point for our members to kind of, you know, pick and choose which ones and then come up with some recommendations from those presentations, because those are things, like Chris said, that we've actually discussed in our group. So it's homework kind of, but
And you don't have to have any recommendations, but
true. Well, you know,
but if you can get a strong one, because you don't want to just have one for the sake of having one.
correct.
Because remember, you have to sell it to the whole commission, and they have to vote on it. And we don't want to
We have to feel strongly about it.
Yeah,
We do.
yeah. That's what I'm just trying to say. They did vote one of our recommendations down last year.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that happens sometimes. So, but. All right. Anything else to add to that?
Oh, so we
I
need to
would,
open up for public comment too. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. Everybody probably heard the news that the governor released an executive order aimed at sort of aligning the state around implementing our climate pollution reduction plan. So if anybody hasn't read that EO, I placed it in the chat. It might be food for thought in terms of a recommendation, because this EO is really it's requiring various roughly 20-ish agencies as defined in the EO. The definition of agency is a little wish-washy, so we got to think about that. We can't grapple with that, but it would be interesting to see how the commission might be of service to these partner agencies that don't know what a climate implementation plan might say, right? So I'm just dropping that in the chat as food for thought, because that's going to be a challenge, especially to hit that November 1st deadline. Certainly that's not going to happen. Certainly is nothing that this group can recommend for this year, but that's a heavy lift for a lot of folks, and implementing that executive order is going to be challenging for MDE and all state agencies. It's a tight deadline.
We actually talked about that in our we have like the facilities and sustainability wide discussion for all the USM schools, and that became a topic for us because many of us were thinking, so we have to try to put a whole plan together between now and November, as in addition to everything else we have to do. But then someone else read that it looks like they're defining USM as the agency, not each individual institution. So yeah, like you said, the definition of agency is something to consider with that as well.
But the definition of agency, just because University of Maryland is the agency, they've still got to cover all of you.
No, that's true. You're right.
So,
Yeah, so we're still not completely void from the process. We have to be involved. You're right, but supposed to be USM, I guess, in speaking for all of us in a way. But we have to, yeah, that's
okay. Here's where I think ECO could be helpful and make recommendations. I think the commission really needs somebody to do this. Figure out how this the sub-cabinet under the EO is going to interact with the commission on climate change, because they're going to have to, it's going to be tricky because of their roles and their duties by law and our roles and duties by law. And so how are those going to mesh? And someone's got to analyze all that and then make a recommendation. That's where I think ECO could be a little hero.
yeah, I think establishing some sort of protocols for interaction and collaboration, because there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap. When I first read it, I was like, wait, what? Like, aren't we responsible for some of this?
Yes.
So yeah, I was really surprised. Something that's been around, and I know I've brought it up at commission meetings before. I have a tendency to move towards branding in my brain because that's kind of work I do. I still really feel like climate change in Maryland needs some sort of brand and a message that's universal, because right now it's all over the park. Everybody talks about it differently. There's nothing to get behind. There's literally nothing. A mascot.
Well, there's one
nothing.
thing.
Okay.
There's one thing. That's the official Maryland state goals of greenhouse gas emissions reductions. That's something that everyone can get behind. And it's probably not as controversial as all the ways we're going to get there. I mean, you go to these meetings, even at the commission, there are arguments. lots of arguments. So it's hard to put a message to the public when we're arguing amongst ourselves.
Well, and a part of that is, I mean, you could incorporate the goals into the brand, but I mean, it needs to be something really relatable. And in a lot of ways, those goals are not relatable to the average person that isn't in the environmental industry. So I feel like that's an important part. I feel like we get so involved in the science that we're missing the fact that we need support for all of it. Budget, funding, legislation. People need to know this is a thing. And they need something very simple, visual, like a mascot.
That's what Astrid said.
Something that people can get behind. And there's so much misinformation, there's so much confusing messaging, and it's coming from so many sources. It would be really great if all the state agencies were speaking the same language, and right now they're not.
Well, they have to. Well, MDE has to do a huge outreach plan by law, so I think something's going to mesh over there.
Okay.
You know, something's going to come together.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, there are no other comments on that. Should we open up for public comment?
Yep. Or to any of the members as well.
Yeah.
It's just any open discussion. I'm sorry, we are running 3 minutes over. We'll probably be a few more minutes, depending on discussions.
Anyone?
No.
We're doing
So
everything.
do you want people to start letting you know now or
Yes.
soon about becoming a member of the teaching subgroup? You can start forming that.
Yeah,
soon?
well, we had mentioned that last time, if anybody was interested in joining the subgroup.
I think Astrid's put her hand up for that at this meeting, right, Astrid?
I put my
Or
hand
she
up.
did now.
My hand is up. I didn't put my hand up. What? For what? What?
I thought I saw you put something in the. I'd love to get more involved. Thanks. What were you talking
Oh,
about?
that was for the legislative effort.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That was for the recommendation, not the teach-in.
But we do have a subgroup. We might need to add Toddy. She might be good too. But we'll check with her later. Yeah. So I mean, I think we have a group already. We'll just have to kind of go with that for now. But we'd love to add some other members.
It's a great group. Everybody did a great job. Everybody played to their strengths. We want to replicate what Donald Bell did in Prince George's County, because Donald, man, you pulled out all the
Yeah,
stuff.
you're right.
You
Yeah.
did.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about at the conference next week is we have a slide with your face on it, Donald. And we're going to talk to them about replicating what you did in Prince George's County so successfully that you had way more than any other county participants in the teaching. And also on one last high note, if I may, we collaborate with the global teach-in. The guy who is the co-founder is from Montgomery County, lives in Maryland. And he and I keep in constant touch, but he told me that Maryland had more participants in our Maryland teaching than any other state in the country and any other country in the world.
Yep.
Maryland is #1 with the teaching participation. So congrats, everybody.
Yes.
That's a big one.
Kudos to ECO,
Yep. So we're just going to continue it and make it even more, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Have you
Okay.
found a way to make sure the commissioners know that, Susan? Or has anyone?
We haven't yet, actually, have we?
No.
I would tout that
maybe they'll let us show our presentation sometime. No, that's a good point, Jody. At the next commission meeting, when you guys have the opportunity to report on eco, that's the place to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jody. Great idea.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody
And
for
we
being
even have a
patient.
slide. We even have a slide for that with
Oh,
all
yeah.
the gazillions of red dots in Maryland, concentrated in Maryland, and it's a worldwide map.
Mhm. Yep.
And you zoom in and you see all the dots in Maryland. So, mhm.
So cool.
Yeah. All right. So, some of the agenda items we're going to, push to the next meeting, hopefully.
Mhm.
If that's it, then we will see everybody at the next meeting in August. But again,
Yep.
we're going to still expect some of this feedback in between now and that time. So,
Right.
thank you all for being the wonderful members that you are.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.